Welcome to Aaron's particle space. In this tutorial I'm going to set up a small puzzle using particle signaling. I'm basically going through the whole process of drawing and creating the whole puzzle, and I'll explain things as we go along. So what we're going to do is have a car that needs to jump from one side of the screen to the other, but there will be a few obstacles in the way. So first of all, what we'll do is create a road. So we'll go into elements, into the default group, and we'll create a new element, and we'll call this road. And in the properties, we're going to set the friction up to be really high. This means we'll have a lot of traction, and the repulsion is just how much particles push away from each other. So we want a fair amount of repulsion because we don't want things falling through the road, but at the same time, if we have too much repulsion, then particles don't contact too well and we don't get much friction. So around 15 is a fairly good value, and of course friction is set at a full value of 1. So what we then do is go into draw, and we will draw freehand. Now if I hold down the shift key, this is freehand like this, it draws a rigid object, but if I hold down the shift key I can draw straight lines like that. So I'll just delete that. So what we will do then is draw our jump that we're going to do. So I'll start here and we'll draw it up to about there. Whoops. We'll leave it on pause. So we'll draw it up to about there, and then we're going to create a pit, and then the jump up the other side, which will make pretty hard to get over. Maybe raise it up about there, and then down to the end. Alright, and what I'm going to do is I'm going to pin this object to the background in several places like this. So I'm not going to make it fully rigid, it'll still sort of flex around, but it won't drift away whilst we're playing. Alright, so the next thing we need to do then is create a car. So we'll go back into the default group, create a new element, and the first element I'm going to create is wheel. And in the properties, again we want to get good traction, so we're going to set the friction to 1, but this time I'll set the repulsion also to 1. I'll set a very low repulsion. This means the wheel will really bite into the other particles and get good acceleration. And I'm also going to make them fairly heavy, mass of 4. The other thing we need to do is, because we'll be joining this wheel up against the car body, we need to set its rigidity to 0, and this means it will spin freely when we add controls to it, and we join it up with the car body. We'll also set the integration links to 1. This probably isn't really necessary, but it can't hurt because it just stops the car from being too rigid against the wheels. Okay, so let's draw those wheels, see how we go. So if we hit tab, okay, nothing happens because we haven't assigned a control to that particle. So we'll just undo that. If we go to controls now, so we're still in wheel, what we want to do is add a rotational control. So we say yes to that. This is in radians per second, or rotations, which is 2 pi radians, so 6 point something will give you about 1 rotation per second, but we'll say go for 4. We can play around with this. We'll probably leave the acceleration as it stands for the moment, and so that should give us some rotation when we use the arrow keys. Okay, we can change the control type to be the WASD keys, or we can use a controller, which I haven't coded yet, but will be coming. Okay, but we'll stick with the arrow keys. Alright, so we'll hit Tab to unpause. Actually, we'll use the space bar. There's two ways you can play this. If you unpause now, the editor's still running, so everything that happens while you're playing becomes permanent, although you can use the Control Z to undo. But if you just use the space bar, then it goes into game mode, so you can just play around, and then when you hit space again, it immediately jumps back to where you were in the editor. So that's what we'll do. So I'm hitting space, and our particle's rolling down. Now if I use the arrow keys, it begins to roll, and away we go. Okay, so that wasn't particularly good on the acceleration there, but things will probably improve once we get the weight of the car body onto it. So we'll draw another wheel like this. Now for the car body, we'll need to create another element, new element, and we'll call this car. And we probably don't need to really do too much with this, but what I will do is, to make it look pretty, we will draw a circle like this. Actually, we might make the particles a bit smaller. We'll draw a circle like that, and we'll get rid of part of this. Delete key. A bit more. Actually, we'll just do it like this. Delete. So probably one more. We'll go with that. So I'll just move this down to here, and we'll put the wheels up against it like this. Okay, and probably a bit big actually. Oh look, we'll go with it. We'll weld. So I'm just selecting the particles and then hitting the W key to weld it on. So now what we have is the wheel particle welded onto the car body structure here. And because the wheel particles have a rigidity of 0, they will freely spin without affecting the car body. So if I hit unpause now, there we have our car, which is ready to run. Okay, really flips up. Okay, so the aim of this puzzle is to get the car from one side of the screen to the other, which at this point is probably a little bit difficult because we're not quite getting enough speed up. So I think what I might do is just shrink the car body down, make the wheelbase a little bit smaller for starters. So we'll just go back to here. So if I delete a couple of these particles, and okay, and we'll weld them together again. Okay, so pretty low profile car, but okay, we've got half a chance of getting over. So we might just give it a little bit more of a lip up. So what I'm going to do is we'll go back to edit mode, and we'll delete maybe this part here. And if we go into, there's two pause modes. One, everything is rock solid, but if I hit the M key, I can go into what's called bullet time, matrix mode. And when we do that, we can move things around. There's a bit of fluidity like that. We can move it. So you stay there. Okay. And what it will do is we'll put a little bit of a lip on the jump here. We'll bring that through like that. So just bring you back down a bit. Tab. Oops. Okay. Alright, so if we play that now, we've got a bit more of a lip. Let's go. Okay, nice. So we jump across to the other side. Alright, well that's well and good, but we don't really have a game yet because we haven't set up an objective. So I'm going to go back into default group and create a new element, and we'll call this objective, and we'll set the objective to be over here. So if I go into edit mode, into draw mode, here it is. Sorry, I was right the first time. In edit mode, we select change particle, and we're going to change to the objective, and all we have to do is just run the mouse over the particles we want to change. Okay, so that's created our objective. Right, so how do we actually set up the objective? Well, we've got the objective particles. We now need to go to the reaction properties and add a new reaction for objective. And our objective is to get the car to land on these particles here. So we'll set up a reaction type where we have an impact. So an impact that's greater than 0, so any sort of impact against those particles, and we want it to react with the wheel particle. And so that means that when the wheels impact the objective particle, this reaction will run. And in this particular case, we just want to set an objective, so we'll set the objective target to 1. So now we have objectives remaining 1 of 1. So if we run this, what should happen is when the car lands over on the other side and hits the objective, you'll see that the objective is completed. Alright, so we've set up the objective. Okay, now for the puzzling element, we want to create an obstacle. So to do that, we go into default group, new element, we'll call this obstacle, and as the name suggests, it will be an obstacle for our car. So we'll go to draw, and we'll draw a rectangle, and we'll use size 2 particles, and we'll draw it as an onion. So we'll place our obstacle like so, and to make sure it doesn't move away, I'm going to pin the obstacle down like this. So let's just test that. Make sure we actually have an obstacle now. And bang, we can't get over. So now we come to the next step. And that's the other sort of mini game that'll be involved here. And what we'll be doing is we'll be creating something a bit like Angry Birds. We're going to have to project a particle up onto a platform, and we've got to get 2 particles onto 2 platforms, which then triggers a reaction to somehow break down this obstacle for us. So the first step is to create a slingshot. So we'll go to the default group, new element, and we'll call this slingshot. And we'll go to draw, and we'll draw freehand, go back to size 3, and we'll draw a line like this and pin it to the background. And for the properties, I'm going out of control, and the control type is called mouse interaction, which I'll set to yes. What this means is when we go into play mode, I can't actually do anything with any of the particles, but with the slingshot particle I can, because I've allowed it to interact with the mouse. So that means I can grab it and move it around. So yeah, okay. So, and for the rigid body we've set the integration as well, so that's good. Alright, so now we also need to have a particle that we can slingshot. So we'll go to elements, default group, create a new element, and we'll call this ball. And we'll draw that there. So if we test this now, as you can see, we can shoot the ball wherever we want. So as I said, we want to shoot 2 balls up to 2 targets. So first of all, let's create the targets. So go back to element, new element, call it target, and I think I'll make these size 2 particle, and we'll put one. Oops, we're in the wrong one there. We want to go back to target. Okay. Okay, so 1 target here and 1 target here, and we'll just pin these to the background. And I'm going to set the rigidity of the targets to be 0 and an integration link of 1 also. So they'll sort of slump down there like a bit of rope now. So what we now need to do is try and shoot our target into shoot the ball into the target like that. Okay, so I said we're going to have 2 balls, 2 targets in order to trigger a reaction to somehow get rid of this obstacle. So what I'm going to do is create yet another element. I'm going to call this net, and I'll draw it over here, just a very short line. I'll pin that again, and like target, I'm going to set the rigid to be 0 and the integration also 1. And if what we might do is go to matrix mode. I'm just going to move this a little bit close together like this, and I'm going to put a ball in like that. So if we have a look at that now, okay, so I've got a ball over here which I can slingshot because I can interact with the slingshot particles, but I can't get to this ball in any way. So obviously the first stage of the puzzle is to somehow release this ball so we can get it up onto the slingshot. Okay, something else you may have noticed. At this point in time, if I take a shot and I miss, there's nothing more I can do. I can't get... the only thing I can interact here with is the slingshot. I can't get the ball. So we need to somehow get this ball to come back in position so we can have another attempt. Okay, so the way we can do that is to set up a reaction with the ball itself. So we'll go into reaction and we'll call it add reaction, and we'll call it restart. And this will be an impact reaction, and it'll be an impact with the road particle. So if we type in road here, okay, and what we'll do when we impact the road, what we'll do is we will respawn the particle back to its creation point. And if you look down here, there's an option called respawn. Okay, so we say yes for that, and it's respawn element when annihilated, so we also have to basically destroy the particle as well on the collision. So if we just put in a very small time value here, basically what will happen is when the ball hits a road particle, it will annihilate itself and then respawn back to the point that it was first drawn in the editor. So we'll just test that. We'll flick the particle off, and Well, there you go. Anyhow, we'll see what happens. Okay, so that one, there you go. So they were both born in those spots, and when they hit the road they respawn back, so we can have another attempt. Okay, so that was kind of cool. We actually managed to get the other ball out just by shooting it, but that's not really what I wanted to do, because I wanted to demonstrate signaling here. So let's do that. Alright, what I want to do is when this ball lands in either one of these targets, this rope here will get cut and release this ball down, which will hit the road, and obviously it'll respawn back to the net here. Okay, so I don't want to do that. I actually want to respawn over here. So what I'm going to do is I'll actually delete this, and I'll move this one here, and we'll place it there. And now I can move it over to here. So when it respawns, so initially when we start the game it'll be in this position, but when it respawns it'll come over here onto the slingshot. And the other thing I want to do is to trigger the reaction here when this ball hits either one of the targets. So what I'm going to do is set up a connection between this particle and this particle by joining them or welding them. Okay, so that means that if I send a signal into this target now, the signal will run along and jump across this connection, and then we can have these particles react to the signal. Okay, so bear with me. So what we'll do is go to the ball particle, and under reactions we'll add a new reaction, and this time this is when we hit the target, and the reaction type will be when we hit the target. Okay, so we're talking about the ball particle here when it has an impact with a target particle. What we want to do is we want to generate a signal, and we more or less want to generate signals straight away. So in 1/100th of a second we'll fire off a signal, and the signal value will be the same as the particle. So basically what happens is when the signal is generated, the signal that runs through down to this object will have the particle ID associated with it, which is the ball. So what we can do is, if I go Control right click on the particle, I now bring up the properties for the net. Okay, and we can add a reaction here that can react to the ball signal that will be travelling through. So so this reaction type then is a reaction to a signal, and we want to react to signals from the ball particle. Okay, and then we can just do whatever we want. So in this particular case I think we will just break the particles more or less straight away. So what have we done here? We've set up a couple of reactions. We've set up a reaction for the ball where when we hit the target we will generate a signal, and for the net we've created a reaction where when it receives a signal it will break the particle from any rigid body that it's made up from. So let's see how that works. I probably won't be lucky enough to get... Okay, and there you go, it didn't do anything. And there's a reason for that, because we must always remember to make the particles conductive. So this also needs to be conductive, and this also needs to be conductive. Alright, and what I will do is I'll just place the ball here so we can just see what happens when it hits the target. So bang, there goes the signal, it breaks the particle and our ball falls down, and then because we've got the respawn, it's jumped across here, ready to go. Okay, so that all happened pretty quick, but it's exactly what we wanted. Okay, so we also want to be either of these nets to trigger a reaction here. So what I'm going to do is also select these two and weld them together. So that now means that if the ball lands on this one, we'll also send a signal through and cause a break to occur. So just check that, and down she goes. Okay, we release the ball. Alright. Okay, so the next step now is we want to take the signal from these two targets when the balls are in them and use those signals to trigger another reaction that somehow gets rid of this obstacle. So if you'd watched the first tutorial on particle signaling, you realise we've got two signals that we want to have come in to trigger another reaction. So we need a particle that acts like an AND gate. It needs two signals before it'll pass the signal on. So if we go to default group, new element, we'll call this particle trigger, and all we need to do is in the properties section change the conductive to 2, and then we'll just place that particle there. And while I'm at it, I'm going to create another particle which I'm going to call stringer, and all we'll do with it for now is set its conductive value to 1, and I'll draw a line of those here. Just try that again. We'll draw a line of those here, and I'll just resize those like that. Okay, so we want the signals coming in to our trigger, so let's join this target up and weld it, and this target up and weld it, and then we also want to join the trigger to our line of stringer particles here. So join that up. Okay, so let's see how that works. So if we run it, okay, we might just freeze that in place. Okay, so the particles broke, but nothing's happening so far. If we move this one up here, so we generate two signals. Okay, and there you go. Signals coming in there, signals coming in there, and then because this needs two signal inputs before it conducts, it now conducts and passes a signal through. So now we can start coding a reaction for the stringer particle. Okay, so what is that reaction going to be? Well, I thought we might do something a little bit interesting. I'm going to create a new element called string, and we'll go back to stringer, and we're going to add a reaction. And because we're being triggered by the signal, this is going to be a reaction type from a signal, and we want to accept signals from the ball particle. And what we will do when we get that signal is create every 1/10 of a second a string particle, and we'll just create one, and the direction is the direction from the particle that the new particle will be created. So 0 is at 3 o'clock, 360 is random. We'll just try, we'll go 360, make it random. Okay, so what happens then when we run this? Okay, so there you go. When both balls are touching and generating a signal, we start throwing out these string particles. Alright, now I want to get a little bit more tricky, so I'm going to add, we'll call that, we'll call reaction 1, we'll call that grow, or spawn, whatever. And I'll add a new reaction, which I'll call, I'll just call it join. So what we're going to do here is have the string particles stick to the stringer itself. So we'll have this when there's an impact with a string particle, and we want to join. Okay, so if we see how that works now, okay, we get a bunch of particles sticking to our stringer. Alright, but I want to keep this moving, so if we go back now to the string particle, first up I want to change the number of connections that a string particle have to be 2. I'll set the integration to 1 and the rigidity to 0, and I'll also do the same for the stringer. I'll set its rigid body also to 0, an integration length of 1, and I'll set the connections maybe 3. Alright, so this connections parameter, that just dictates what's the maximum number of connections a particle can have within the rigid body. So when you've only got 2 maximum, well, you'll see what happens. Okay, so let's test this and see how this goes. Alright, not much has changed. That's because we haven't set up the reaction for the string particle. We need to add a reaction here, which we're going to call join. And again, when we have greater than impact, we will react with itself, with the string particle, and we'll make them join. Okay, so now we should see something quite different. Okay, and there you go. They begin to grow, these chains of spaghetti. Okay, so there's only a maximum of 2 joins, so each particle can join to 2 other particles, so it's creating a string. And as you can see here, it's even 2 strings have touched at the ends and they've closed off. So yeah, so we're getting pretty close. This is creating quite a huge mess, so I think what we'll do is we'll do something similar to what we did with the ball particle, and that is we'll have the string particles annihilate themselves when they hit the road, but we won't have them respawn because we've got plenty of them being spawned up here with the signal. So we're in string. We'll go back to the reactions. I'll add a new reaction, and we'll call this destroy. Okay, and then again, this is when we have an impact with the road particle, and we're simply just going to annihilate maybe in half a second or so. Alright, so when we run this now, if you watch the particles when they hit the road for a little while and then they disappear. So that stops us from building up too much. Okay, so we're pretty close now to the solution to this puzzle, and that is we're going to have these string particles melt or break apart our obstacle here, and then that should allow us to drive our car over to the objective. So to do that, we need to go back to reactions for the string particle and add another reaction. We'll call this melt obstacle, and again this will be an impact reaction, and what we're going to do is break the particle pretty much straight away. Now this normally applies to the particle that the reaction belongs to, but we can set this setting up here to say apply to other, so that means it will apply this reaction to the other particle that we're colliding with, so in other words the obstacle particle. So I'll set that to yes. So if we run this now, what we should see is, okay, well it kind of worked, but something didn't quite, okay, reacts with all particles. We have to change that to be just with road particles. Okay, so try that again. Alright, so down they come. What am I'm being silly. Obstacle particles. Let's do that again. Alright, and so as the string particles hit it, it begins to break apart the obstacle. Alright, well, let's just see how that plays in. So we'll move that down to there, move this back to here, and we're basically ready to give the whole thing a go. So we need to try and get one particle up, and that releases the second particle. Then we need to try and get this one. Okay, I missed. Oh, okay, cause a slight trigger. It'll hit the road and restart. Try again. Oh, now I've overshot. I never was good at these games. Okay, and now we immediately see a problem. We don't respawn when we hit the objective particles over here, so that's easily fixed. We'll just add a reaction. We'll call it respawn ball, and there'll be an impact reaction. Oh, hang on. That's one that already exists. We're changing the wrong one. That's the objective reaction. So go back to reactions, add a reaction. Okay, respawn ball, and greater than impact. We want to annihilate. Okay, we could have put this reaction on the ball particle, but like I said, you can do it either way. So we've started this way, so we'll go this way. So annihilate that, and say respawn yes, and it's the ball that we want to annihilate and respawn, so we have to do the apply to other here. Yes. Okay, so let's try it again. So see if we can get, okay, so that releases that one, and alright, so that starts it melting. Then we get ready with the car, and off we go. Hopefully we can, okay, pretty pathetic attempt there. Alright, you get the general idea. So there's probably a few things we could do actually to make that a little bit easier. We could probably have the particles, the wheel particle and the body particle, possibly break or annihilate the string particles, so we can jump through them. So, well, we might as well do that. So we've got the wheel, reaction, add reaction. So again, greater than impact with string particle, and we'll just annihilate them. and make it pretty quick so it doesn't slow us up. So, and we can just quickly test that. So let it come down. We'll wind. Whoa! Oh dear, what happened there? Something. Oh, I know. Apply to other. We're annihilating ourselves, the wheel. Okay, do it again. Okay, here we go. Falling apart. Let it come down a bit. Wind her up. And go. Oh! I feel as if we need just a little bit more speed on the wheel there. So, if we go to controls, we'll set the rotational velocity to 6. See if that. But yeah, you get the general idea. I mean, it's all about fine-tuning. Obviously, like any game design, you have to test, and more test until you're happy with the solution. So, and there you go, we're over. So, okay, for some reason we died on the end there. I'll probably have to investigate that. Alright, so, okay, so that's it. That gives you a bit of an insight into how we can use signals to set up events and create puzzles in Aaron's particle space. Alright, thanks for watching, and I'll see you next time.